Hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and see what we can get into. We're going to do a little NIDS research project uploaded on 8/29 of 2001 to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Radio Networks. Good morning. If you want to see what everybody's talking about, join us at artbell.com. That's my website, artbell.com. When you get there, click on program tonight's guest. The name right through the program you'll see, and then you see. And then it says topic, crop lift images. Click on those. Go down to, I don't know, image number 2 first, because that'll blow your mind. That's the nuclear with the apparent answer from the Arecibo message in 74, right in front of that telescope, the physical picture of it. Then go down to image number 3, and you'll see a detailed presentation of the Arecibo message, and it's important to take a look at that. And then if that's not enough for you, go down to image number 7, and you'll see the testing on the ground that would have been required in the middle of the night to do something as complicated as replicating that field. I say impossible. Well, nothing's impossible, but very nearly impossible. I think that's the real McCoy. That's what everybody's talking about. In a moment, coming up, from here. He is the Deputy Administrator of the National Institute of Discovery Science. He runs day-to-day operations. He's a researcher. He's going to obviously have something to say about this and related topics, animal mutilations, what went on in New Jersey. There's just a lot going on out there right now, and I imagine they'll have a big debate we'll hear all about. Across the Las Vegas. Country is arguably the first and only reporting number in the official FAA manual for UFO-related stuff, for pilots and FAA people to report. Actually listed in the FAA manual. What an honor, huh? NIDS has come a long way, and with it, Cullender, the Deputy Administrator and Researcher for NIDS. Welcome back to the program, Colin. Great to be here again, huh? Well, gosh, Colin, it's kind of an interesting time. Yeah, it seems like a lot is happening. A lot is happening. And I guess we could begin with this incredible Chilbolton group. That's what we're calling it, isn't it? It doesn't just seem like a traditional crop circle to us, so we're calling it a group. But it's in crop, so I don't know. What's your take? What do you think? What did you hear about it? What's going on? Well, we heard about it a week ago, or less than a week ago, and since then it's provoked probably the most intense action on our that I've seen in a long time. In other words, science advisory board with backgrounds of physics, and a lot of consultants have chimed in on this topic. And the main point of argument is how could it be done? And most of the arguments are focused on whether it could be done successfully from the air by a government aircraft. Well, that would indicate to me that the discussion participants, for the most part, must discount the possibility that it was done on the ground by some students or something. Yeah, I think there's been very little discussion about whether or not several people were using planks at night, that kind of thing, because the level of sophistication, and especially on the face which first appeared, followed by the Chilbolton, both of those are not indicative of being done on the ground. Now that, to us, that's in contrast to a lot of the other formations that appeared this summer. I think the formations in England for the last couple of years have been not as spectacular as they were a few years ago, but these latest ones are the exception. Turn you right on your ear. Yeah, exactly. And I think the Mill Hill one with the 409 separate circles, which I know you discussed previously on your program, To us, that was a departure because of the technical perfection. You want to hear something interesting that somebody wrote to me about that? And this is just speculation about the 409 circles. Sure. It says, if I'm right about the 409 circles being a geometric representation of the 409 elements that structure the universe, I predict that when they investigate, they will find a trace amount of each of those elements in each circle. Now that I haven't heard before. Right. So I wasn't even aware that 409 elements made up no, was that universe. But the head of FEPRA, which is a French organization, dedicated to the study of UFOs and other things, but it was funded originally by the French government, and it is still in existence, but on a much lower level than it used to be. The head of FEPRA is Jean-Jacques Velasco. Several years ago, he wrote a very interesting paper on the electromagnetic requirements of creating crop circles or crop formations or glyphs from an aircraft. And in other words, he put in some of the physics and some of the electromagnetic requirements. There's been a lot of discussion on our list from people who are very sympathetic to the idea that this may be some form of weapon or some form of instrumentation that's been tested and calibrated and perfected over several years. And the question of why it would be used for so long, obviously, is an interesting one. I suppose anything is possible, and that's certainly possible. I speculated myself about satellites. Satellites could have certainly done this, but I refuse to believe that it was done on the ground. I absolutely refuse to believe it was done on the ground. It just couldn't have been done. Yeah, we don't think it was done on the ground either. And the actual content of the message that Richard Hogan was talking about, I found some of his comments pretty interesting. Yes. Particularly on the silicon. The fact that silicon is an integral member of part of bone formation, which it is, but it's nowhere near as important as the other elements. If you look at the total biochemistry of the human body, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus are really the main players in formation. And here on Earth, and what? Here on Earth. That's right. Right through the animal and plant kingdoms, but he is correct on the silicon angle. He also put out an interesting thing on the triple helical DNA, which has been used routinely in the last several years for interrupting gene transcription. And in other words, you can actually create triple helical DNA in the lab, and it is used for forms of genetic manipulation. Oh, wow. I had no idea. Yeah, so that is correct. But I'm actually looking at the glyphs or the comparison that Paul Vigay or Vigay had, and it's I can't actually see the triple helical DNA, but I do know that triple helix DNA is routinely used. The other aspect about the short-lived nuclides that he had mentioned, I was not aware that they had been found in crop formations. As you probably know, Robert Bigelow was instrumental in creating Project Argus, which was I think it was one of the first major instrumented studies of crop formations in southern England, and it was in the early 90s. But one of the instruments that they had with them was specifically to look at the short-lived nuclides, which had been reported. And the results of Project Argus were negative. In other words, there were no nuclides found in that study in the formations that they looked at in the early 90s.
Obviously, that's not to say that that all formations didn't have them, but they specifically looked at them, they defined them.
This is unambiguously intended to be an answer to the Arecibo signal. If you would agree with that, sir.
Definitely.
Okay. Right. So if some government did this from a plane with some new experimental technology, why would they do this? I mean, why would they do this? Why would they provide an answer to what was sent from Arecibo? Why would a government do that? I can see they might make circles, they might do other things, but why would they do this? That doesn't make sense.
Well, I think you could certainly look at it from humor because, particularly the humanoid figure stuck in there with a large head, which is very classical Hollywood. You could also point out that silicon has been for decades been discussed in science fiction literature as the alternative to carbon-based life.
When I was in the Air Force, and there wasn't a lot of humor there. I mean, really.
Well, you may be right. I was focusing mostly on the face as a possible, having been done from the air, because the face is one of those computerized versions of an image that would have to be done with a computer.
Exactly.
Manually doing it and hoping that you got all of the nodes correctly would just not work.
Nigh on to impossible.
Yeah, the structure of that particular formation is about 220 separate honeycombs, and in each honeycomb, the crop is laid down in varying amounts.
That's right.
And even if you made 6 mistakes in, say, 6 to 7 honeycombs around the nose area, you would totally destroy the entire image. So out of 220 honeycombs, there are no mistakes that can be seen. So that seems to suggest the machine.
I agree with you. It would have to suggest a machine of some sort. Accuracy. It just could not be achieved in the dark. We know they were done overnight. By I don't care who's on the ground.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. And so this is a really, really big story. And I guess obviously the people you associate with are at least treating it that way as well, because even if it means our government did it from the air, that's a big, big story.
It is a big story. Now, the other part of the discussion that has been raging within NIDS is the naysayers who are, they're technically adept physicists as well, and engineering backgrounds, and they're saying that it couldn't be done. So, there's a group saying, yes, it can be done, and then there's another equally expert group saying, no, it can't be done. So it's certainly not anyway resolved. It's just been a really, really intensive discussion.
Well, I suppose it could be somebody's sense of humor, but to design this Chilcotin glyph, would have required pretty serious study and thought. I mean, you'd really have to kind of think it out to come up with this.
Definitely, yeah.
Before you ever got to the let's drop it out in the field, or to drop it, or irradiate it from a plane part.
Yes, I saw an alternative explanation for the DNA, and that is that usually DNA has about 9 nucleotides per spiral in a double helix, and one of the interpretations I saw was 6 nucleotides per spiral, which means the actual bonding in the DNA in the return glyph, if you want to call it like that, is very, very different from the normal 9 turns per spiral in normal DNA as we know it. And that actually implies a totally different structure of the backbone of the DNA in the returning glyph. So it's not actually a triple helical DNA, it's just an entirely different bonding structure.
Is NIDS getting calls asking what NIDS thinks about this?
Yes, we've had a few, mostly emails, but yeah, we've had quite a few actually.
How do you generally respond to those?
We generally respond by saying that we have not actually looked at the formation, but some of our consultants think that it's been done from the air, and that can be anywhere from a couple of thousand feet to 100,000 feet. Or as you mentioned, satellite. I'm not aware of the kind of technology that would be used for satellite, but an aircraft with the appropriate camouflage, daytime or nighttime, and we know, I think pretty well, we know that sort of aircraft is routinely deployed. That it's very difficult to see either daytime or nighttime. So you would not have to be at a very high altitude in order to accomplish this. If you were using something like a microwave laser to carry it out, the altitude may not be too high.
And so could a laser do that?
Well, that's been the fundamental argument on our list. There's people who worked in laser research who said no way, and then there's other people who said yes. So it's right now the jury's out. But I think the general agreement so far that I've seen is that definitely these latest ones have definitely been done from the air.
From the air,
Yes.
By us or by somebody.
Yes. But the idea of a bunch of students kind of randomly putting this Arecibo message together and doing it on the ground seems to me to be pretty ludicrous. It's as you mentioned, it required a lot of thought and a lot of planning, and also a fairly good level of biochemistry, probably graduate level biochemistry.
Not to mention the fact, by the way, Colin, that no human footprints or signs of human activity were found around either one of these, nor the 409 circles for that matter, and that's always looked at very carefully at the very beginning before people would move around.
Well, that's one of the really interesting issues, because according to the information that we heard, that it was raining on the night that the 409 circles appeared.
That is correct.
Now, I went over to Southern England to investigate the crop formation situation a few years ago. And after a rainy night, if you're tromping around in those fields, you very, very quickly get about 6 inches of very thick, dense mud at the bottom of your boots. I mean, it's impossible to avoid that. And so it slows you down, number one. But secondly, it makes you leave tracks. It would be very, very difficult to avoid leaving tracks like that on the ground, especially during rain.
So the NIDS position on all of this right now is very interesting, or fascinated, or
oh yeah, the NIDS position is fascination. We have not had any people on the ground over in Southern England for the last couple of years. But before that, we usually had one person during every summer.
Well, when they sent you over there and you walked in these, right? Not these, but one blanket. What was it like? I mean, what were your impressions on the ground?
Well, the first formation that I went into was the famous Stonehenge formation, right across the A303 road motorway from Stonehenge, and that was 1996, July 1996. It was a formation of about 150 circles, reminiscent actually of the Mill Hill formation this year.
All right, Colin, that's a good place to hang people up. I love cliffhangers. You'll find out. I mean, how many of us have been on the ground in a crop circle? Yeah. Very gratified with NIDS is having a big discussion about this and believes it can't be done from the ground. So I'm just a layperson. And I looked at this and I said, there's no way in hell. This is a serious story. Don't really know this glitch in front of this telescope that killed both of them. This acid from LSD goes up because that used to tell before. This is a good story, folks. The story that was handled, and Microsoft took this and Microsoft target again. The rifle again, and the target again. Put his finger over the end of the rifle balance. Use the trigger with his other hand. And the receiver going off whereupon he shot toward the target area. Legal here is fine. The trouble was it has a 24-hour hotline, right? It happens to be going on out there. They have the resources to find the ability, the energy to go out and if necessary for an investigator in the field to look at whatever you got going on every call. Of course, the results of the investigator some sort of people's passion. In fact, I would imagine a small percentage, but they do have that ability and they do that do it. And the reason why they hotline number, and what is that? Please call. It's area code 702-798-1700. And you can also log on to our website at www.nidsci.org and you can fill out a form electronically if you don't want to talk on the telephone. But tonight, if you do call tonight, we will take your number quickly because of the number of calls, and then we'll get back to you tomorrow. All right, so in other words, if you've got something you want to say, folks, that number is available right now. No, normally not at night, but tonight it is. Area code 702-798-1700. And I'm going to try to so let me try this again. That's 702-798-1700. Okay, if you have any more music preferable, things that you would find, if not, we'll move on to whatever else you have. Well, just to mention that in 1996, in the summer of 96, I was with a group of people who were one of the first into the so-called Julius, which is a formation that appeared very quickly across the road, across the highway from Stonehenge. And the interesting thing about entering this formation was, number one, we were completely befuddled as to what the formation, the whole formation looked like. As far as you could see, all you could see were different sized circles. We kept on walking. We just had no idea what it looked like. And then a day later, when somebody had taken an aerial shot of it, we realized what exactly it looked like. So to us on the ground, it was almost impossible to see what the overall shape was. The second thing that we noticed, I was with a group, the four of us total, and all four of us experienced dizziness and disorientation after going in there. And this was very, very fresh. This formation just appeared less than 24 hours. And we were one of the first people in, but still the people which are gathering concepts from within the formation and then concepts of control the building distance from the formation. And that's what the back to there. And we had an enormous amount of difficulty in actually focusing and concentrating and overcoming the dizziness and the variation to accomplish what the example that took us literally a couple of hours. That's remarkable. I've heard that before. Yeah, that's the worst. And then other formations that we went into, maybe in the ensuing days, there was no hint of that whatsoever. And it just seemed to be this particular formation. It was very disorienting, and all the people that I was with felt the same. So one might speculate a residual energy of some sort or another left because it's so fresh.
That was the speculation that was going around, and we didn't have any measuring equipment with us. We were simply letting to gather the plants and to ship them back to Dr. Levinger.
And what did Dr. Levinger find?
From my memory, and I'm really going on my memory, he did find differences in what he calls the redox ratio, which is a measurement that he uses to estimate the anion-cation ratio in these plants compared with the controls that were found outside the formation. In other words, there was an effect. Now, I think he's interpreted that as being indicative of microwave radiation. But from my memory, he did find those effects in those plants.
Well, I don't know what to say about all this, except that obviously we've turned a corner with this thing. Now they've been mysterious, they've been beautiful, they've been a puzzle. Everybody's, but all of a sudden you turn a corner. I mean, you've got a face, and then you've got this incredible answer to Arecibo's message. Unambiguously, it's turning a corner.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a new level of sophistication. I'm beginning with that Mill Hill formation with the 409 circles. I think that quickly followed by the face, which in turn quickly followed by the Arecibo. I think, yes, we have turned a corner in terms of sophistication. Prior to that, I did not see anything this summer that really raised any interest. Certainly there was no discussion in our group on crop formation, only the appearance of the face, actually. And then we backtracked to start with the Mill Hill formation, too.
Any comments on the face yourself, other than the technical aspects of how it's been made? How does the face strike you?
Well, I've got a printout on my wall, which I'm looking right at right now. I just printed it out from the Cross-Circle Connector website. To me, my interpretation is that it looks definitely human, and it looks like almost like a teenager looking out through a very, very small window. And I know there's been lots of interpretations about, Neanderthal type features and this kind of thing, but as I'm looking at right across the room, and it's a superficial look, that's what I see. It's just a young boy just looking out a small window with an expression that is not particularly happy.
When do you think the media ultimately is going to hit? There is a warming up that's going on right now. It's been on Fox, it's been on CNN.
Yeah.
So it's beginning to move from the fringes to the mainstream. Do you think it'll keep going? Do you think the night will come that soon, Tom Brokaw or whoever is going to report on this?
I think there's a definite change in the tone of media reporting in the last 12 months. It's pretty obvious to me, and yes, I think the trend is going to continue. I think the numbers of print articles and the number of TV coverage of the different missions that we went into maybe in the ensuing days, there was no hint of that whatsoever. And it just seemed to be this particular formation. It was very disorienting, and all of the people that I was with felt the same.
So one might speculate a little bit of residual energy of some sort or another left because it was so fresh.
That was the speculation that was going around. We didn't have any measuring equipment with us. We were simply there to gather the plants and to ship them back to Dr. Levinger.
And what did Dr. Levinger find?
From my memory, and I'm really going on my memory, he did find differences in what he calls the redox ratio, which is a measurement that he uses to estimate the anion-cation ratio.